Welcome once again to our Marks of Mission, Series 4, and our mark for discussion and reflection this evening is Transform. Our presenter will be the Reverend Roosevelt Tate of St. Philip the Less the Great, and we are very happy to have him here and to have with us the other clergy persons, Reverend Desmond Ward and Reverend Curtin. I expect that a couple others will be joining us. They're running a little late, but we should have another interesting discussion. I want to say a special welcome to all of you who join us virtually. It was a joy to have you with us over the last weeks. Forgive me for asking this question, but was it Adrian? What's her name again? Andrea. Is Andrea here? Not yet. Okay. Without any further ado, I now invite Father Desmond to lead us in the opening prayer. Please stand.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Gracious God, your will for us is that we become the agents of change and transformation in our world. Bless those who live out their baptismal covenant through advocating for the dismantling of all unjust and dehumanizing systems. Support those who are exploited and marginalized in our island, region, and around the world. Daily, may we yield ourselves to become your instruments of justice and peace through the power of your indwelling Spirit. We make this and all our prayers through your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord.
Make me a child of your peace. Make me
Our reading is taken from the book of Isaiah, chapter 61, verses 1 to 4 and 8 to 9. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me. He has sent me to bring good news to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberties to the captives and release to the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, to provide for those who mourn in Zion, to give them a garland instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, the mantle of praise instead of a faint spirit. They will be called oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, to display his glory. They shall build up the ruins. They shall build up the ancient ruins. They shall raise up the former devastations. They shall repair the ruined cities, the devastations of many great generations. For I, the Lord, love justice. I hate robbery and wrongdoing. I will faithfully give them their recompense, and I will make an everlasting covenant with them. Their descendants shall be known among the nations, and their offspring among the peoples. All who see them shall acknowledge that they are a people whom the Lord has blessed. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. And now I present to you Reverend Father Roosevelt Tate, our presenter this evening.
Good evening to all. Good evening. During this penitential Christian season, we as Anglicans are addressing the 5 marks of mission, which are, can you tell me which was the first? Tell. Remember that one? Tell. Second, teach. Tend, transform, and treasure. Tell, teach, tend, transform, and treasure. Or, as some will interpret them, as tell, formation, discipleship, social justice, and the environment. The purpose of this exercise is the transformation of the people of God and to integrate these marks of mission into our Christian living. Today, last Sunday of Lent, is our 4th session, which will address one of those T's. Which one? Transformation. Transformation, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is a marked change in nature, form, or appearance. To transform, then, is to change or be changed in appearance, form, or nature. And I like the Webster's Dictionary of Transformation, which states that transform means to change the shape or character of someone or something. To change the shape or the character of, for our discussion's sake, of persons. To transform them is to change or to be changed in appearance, form, or nature. How then are we to bring about this transformation in, first of all, our own lives, and then in the lives of others. The Barbados Light and Power, as you know, has put transformers on some of their utility poles. Have you noticed them? Yes, some have, some haven't. And these transformers on those poles act as a device to change the voltage of the electric current which comes into your homes. And this current, as you know, is produced at the Spring Garden plant. As we attempt to answer this evening's questions, we should be able to find solutions as they relate to the transformation of lives in general. Transform, then, is to seek to transform those unjust structures in our society. And some of them, dehumanizing systems, the exploited and marginalized in our midst. We are to be the instruments of justice and peace in our society. We are to bring the good news, as the lesson states, to the oppressed. This evening, I'm hoping that we will have a video reflection on transformation as it was prepared by the Reverend Dr. Marcus Lashley. The video gives some theological reflection and stresses the fact that justice and advocacy are our responsibility as baptized Christians. That includes all of us here present. After seeing this video, there are 5 reflection questions to focus and direct our attention. If the video is available, I will invite us to view the video before we proceed any further. On the media team. Right, thank you. They do not have the video. I don't know if any of you all were able to view the video personally at home. And Marcus had prepared a very short video on this evening's topic. I can enlighten you of what the video contained. He made reference to 2 Bible passages, which you know quite well. The rich young ruler, remember that story? And the woman at the well. The following points were made. Said that we need to listen to people if we are going to transform the lives of individuals. We have to listen to their story. Secondly, after listening, we have to respond to the person that is in need. And in responding, you have to think of the kingdom values, such as justice, peace, and joy. Point number 3, after listening and responding, it will lead to some form of transformation. And this transformation will come about in a change of heart, thinking process of the individual or individuals, and also a change of hands, that is action, what they do after your encounter with them. And we are encouraged to respond to the lives of people. That was what the video was in a nutshell. Now it's our chance to look at those 5 questions in order to come up with some resolution this evening on transformation. The first question: what comes to mind when you consider the idea of tackling injustice and violence? What comes to mind when you consider the idea of tackling injustice and violence? That is the first part of the question. As you know, justice means the behavior or treatment that is right and fair. The question is asking you, what comes to your mind when you consider the idea of tackling injustice and violence? Anyone would like to lead off the discussion?
He said, big man, does your mouth? You can say what you are saying. That startled me at first. And I made some decisions in my mind, but I did not allow that to deter me
to say that at the same time, if you don't address it, you're already creating a possible situation where harm could arise. And yes, right. So on one hand, when you're saying, if I open my mouth, I may put myself in harm's way if I act. But on the other hand, sometimes if you don't act, if you don't say anything, you're creating the right circumstances for something to happen, right? Right. And in other cases too, it's not a matter of risk, but prevention. So it comes down to teaching, right? Using the opportunities given to you in Sunday school and wherever to talk to young people, to children, to toddlers, teaching them what's right and wrong, the things that we take for granted. If it doesn't belong to you, don't take it. Don't take something from someone without asking. You're at school and you have a good friend and you want to borrow a pencil, and you just walk over to your friend's desk and take the pencil without asking anything. That's all right. So from early o'clock, you start teaching children certain things and certain behaviors and certain values and keep impressing on them, so then that the opportunity for violence or even justice is curtailed. So it comes down to education and being proactive as well.
Proactive is great. Thank you.
Someone was saying something not too long ago. The other part of that question is, what is the one thing you can do? What is the one small thing you can do to assist in transforming an unjust structure? To assist in transforming an unjust structure. What is the one small thing you can do? Said,
Big or small, is this on when we talk about unjust structures, do they have to be 90% good, or unjust structure could be something very small matter? I go, I was standing in line, and other people are, I'm being overlooked, and other people are, getting on ahead. Is that an act of injustice? I'm asking, you must know.
If I don't like calling you a Steve.
You got that right. I'm thinking that it could be as small as just, yes. Pardon? Structure, system, structure. Mm-hmm. Yes. So that's what's asking, does it have to be big, small? Because sometimes when you think about structures, we're thinking about large things, but some things, even this because it's being allowed to grow, to fester, right? So it becomes something large because it's not being addressed earlier. But, sometimes it is being an advocate, just walking with someone and dealing with a matter of justice, being present with them. So this is all they need, to know that someone is going to be there to support them. And you don't have to do anything, don't have to say anything, just be present. And I've done that before. All I had to do was to show up.
But I think that you're saying that is not what priests do. That is what Christians
should do.
are called to do. Okay? I just want to make that clear.
So that's the one small thing that we can do. What is the one small thing we can do to encourage peace and reconciliation? That's the other part of the question. Encourage peace and reconciliation. Yeah, be a listener. Be a listener.
All right, I just wanted to say something about this peace and reconciliation. Just for argument's sake, if we hear gunshots on the outside, my question is, what do we do? Do we think that we should go out with Bibles and sing hymns?
No.
I'm just trying to be practical. And I'm trying to make the point that sometimes our intentions are good, but we have to look at the situation. Right? While we have good intentions, sometimes the best thing to do may be to stay put. Right? The world that we live in, people may not be in our situation or understand what we are going through. But the first thing you will hear is, the people in the church ain't do anything. This is the world that we live in. I think very often we try to make judgment calls and we try to come up with solutions when we really don't have all the facts to make what I consider to be a decent decision. We have to be careful when we try to encourage peace and things like reconciliation. I know that gun violence is a problem, and we are encouraged, if we see something, say something. But we know in other jurisdictions, when certain people realize that you are a key witness and you are the one holding the evidence that will convict A or B, what do? Do you go and take that risk? Is the risk necessary? Is that risk the best thing we can do in a situation like that? You see, people might call us cowards, but sometimes the answers are not that easy. Thank you.
A few years ago, Brother Desmond might remember that we did not hear any gunshots at the Good Shepherd, but I happened to look outside the church and saw two youngsters. I knew one, and there was something in his hand, very small, and this is years ago, very small. And the other fellow, they were trying to get each other from beside the tree. And I did not think. I knew the one little boy. They were about 15 years old or 16. And the mother was my neighbor. We grew up together. And I went outside. Maybe I don't think I thought about anything, but I went right outside of the church Sunday morning, and I called him, and I said, listen, stop that, come to me. And I took the other one, and I walked with both of them. And I crossed the road and took him home. He had a gun, the other fella had a gun. And they would have killed each other or killed some of us in the church. I don't know, but they were outside. They didn't come inside. They were fighting. The one young man who was my neighbor's son is now in the United States as a proper young citizen. Well, maybe 40, 45 years old. But sometimes we think that we have to think but some things happen so quickly that you just have to depend on God and do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what Father Desmond said is clear as well. It depends on what the situation is. Sometimes you have time to think and pray, and sometimes you just have to reflect, act. And I think that ultimately that desire for peace and solving, avoiding trouble can, next thing you know, find yourself in the place like our friend did, one on the right hand and one in the left and both of them. You don't know. You don't know. But chances are that she would. Especially if you know that, because I think that what galvanized her into action was that something in her heart. But that's my dear son. You know, I know them. So do I wait until I get bang and then say, I didn't know she sang, you know you want to get killed. I didn't know you from a little boy, you know. And that is the challenge you have as a Christian. If you have time to think and to reason, you may want to do that. On the other hand, if you're driving and then the next thing you know, you see a oncoming vehicle and you have a couple seconds to decide how you are going to handle this matter. You select that. And you cannot have a, give me 5 minutes and we work, or what you're doing, it doesn't ever really happen like that. When you replay, it seems as though you had all the time in the world to do these things. But when the situation is on you, how to decide. And what we hope for is that whatever we decide, it is a Christian-led or spirit-led decision or response. Always. Let's hope not. But there's no guarantee. Yes. So yes, it comes out of the word obey. What comes on your heart? What is said when you point at that? Younger lady.
A young lady. I could remember some person came home and told my mother, Miss Watson, the police have your son. My mom just put her feet in her slippers and step out and went wherever it was happening. Next time we looked, we saw our brother in front, my mother behind, and the crowd following. So some person, when she got home, some person tell her, you know, you just went and do a bad act. You just went and beat him out of the police hand. The police had him. You just went and beat him out of the police hand. So my mother went in, everybody come in, and then 2 policemen appeared. When 2 policemen appeared, policemen talked with my mom and tell she, I will not do your son anything because you just show us who is the boss. So everything went different.
I just want to convey to everyone that we do need to use the microphone so that those online can hear what is going on. Thank you for your contribution.
Third part to that question. What is the one small thing you can do to challenge the level of violence in our society today? What is the one small thing you can do to challenge the level of violence in our society today?
If you want to speak, just put your hand up, please.
Yes, sir. The sister said all we can do is pray. Yes, that's true. But I think what has happened, our culture has been destroyed somewhat. And because we have a lot of intellectuals saying, oh, don't flog the children at school. It is taking us back to the Middle Passage and a lot of nonsense. So we throw away that good, strong discipline. What does brutality doing in the child? We out of slavery. That's the plantation thing that was with us before. So we're adopting a lot of fancy social laws which are not really helping our children in any way. So it is going to pose a difficulty for us as adults to really help remedy the situation. We can have 99 conferences on youth this and youth the next and youth the third. But if the basics are not taken into these conferences, we are doing absolutely nothing.
Father Small.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephen Small, and to challenge the level of violence in our society, I think we have to go back to the basics, and that is we have to teach our people the commandments first and foremost. Persons have to understand their relationship with God. And secondly, they have to understand the relationship between themselves and others. And they have to come to grips with self. Who am I? Who are we? And certainly, they will know or should know that they are not the makers of themselves. In other words, their power or their strength or what they believe that they have, that they must exercise, is not really theirs. And when they could see that, understand that, then they know they have to behave in a certain way. They have to behave, well, let's take the golden rule. They have to do to others as they would have them do to themselves. Because if you don't want to be hurt, to feel pain, then you should not inflict pain on others. So I think we have to come back to that basic understanding. And we have to teach the commandments. I don't care what people say. The commandments are the principles or the precepts upon which the society must be built. Otherwise, you're going to get it worse and worse and worse. And I'm sure that, and I believe that these precepts are not really emphasized enough, even in the church. So I would encourage priests to make sure that they educate, inform the congregation, the parishioners, and people who may come into contact with us on occasion, like funerals, particularly. I say no more on that for divine being.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father Small. Solid teaching from kind of Small as it relates to what we want or ought to be passing on to society and young people and so forth. Quite recently, I, for some time, questioned whether or not, or how did I fail to impart that very same kind of teaching to two little ones who were part of the congregation to which I ministered. And then to discover that as they got older, they were at Sunday school, they were involved with the church's life and ministry in the community and so on. But as they got older in the school systems and so on, even the family seemed not to be able to put a finger on what would have led them to the path of violence, because they became soldiers with some other group. You know how it goes in this country. It is alleged that there are certain areas in Barbados that they might have been given a name, but they now have new names, Beirut and Red Sea and so on and so forth. And somehow these youngsters got into that kind of a situation. And they have now all been violently killed. And one of the sad things for me was that when I moved to another parish and an execution, so to speak, was carried out, I later learned that it had connection with these same circumstances. And so I was in the middle of grieving families, the one who done it and the one who had it done. Not a good place to be. Of course, the media and everybody had their say, but the reality, somewhere in the journey, the reality is that the attempt was made to have these children raised, as it were, on the Lord's side, but something went awry along the way. It isn't easy being a parent in these times. When I was growing up, every time a child did something wrong in school or wherever, the blame was pointed back to the house, to the home, to the children, to the parents. But I know for a fact that there are a lot of parents who really try, work hard to impart the better way. But the children seem to be led by their friends, their peer pressure, and a high level of deviancy can then pursue. The end result, of course, in this particular case was that families mourned the loss of young men. And violence and death took place, and they are no more.
but the pain remains. They're no more, but the church is still searching for answers. And some may say, well, that's just a one-off situation. It isn't. Every situation is a big situation. Every loss is important. And I think that is what is supposed to galvanize us to respond when we see a situation. You may have a situation where you could not but intervene at the time when they had weapons. But there has to be occasions when they have not gotten there yet. And we, all of us, the church, we have to take, I think, action and have the gift, if you want to call it that way, of seeing what could happen. And don't wait for it to happen to say, you know, I tell you that it can happen, but rather to see how we can intervene. So I've said all that to say that we have to keep doing our part and don't give up on it. There are times when it may appear that we have failed, but it may be that the deviancy was more constant in their lives and more an influence to pull them away from what we may have been trying to get them to be at that point in time. We cannot lose our children like this anymore. I shared with you the incident I experienced where primary school, doing my Lenten teachings, and because I spoke to a little one, he made a gun of his fingers and shot me. Well, you laugh, but it was not funny. And then he realized that it was not funny. And I was pleased that the teachers reacted to it immediately. And we were able to, I think, get the point across to him. But what? When he leaves us and that wears off, what is the environment that he goes back to? What is practiced on his corner? What is it that he's hearing from the older boys or the people in his house when they start to quarrel and the words start to fly and all of that? We don't teach that at church. We don't teach that at school. But when they are in a different environment, all of these things are taught. And young people are curious. I never wanted to see how a gun works. I know how it works because from watching movies, I know they're dangerous. And then I had a chance to be part of my school's cadet corps, and I realized from what handling we were allowed, how dangerous they can be. So that would have helped me to want to do things differently. So I talk. I fire words. I try to get people to surrender to the way of God and to the message from God. But all of us have to be on board in doing the same things. Remember, when we go home after church and we take up the phone and call Miss X and start to lambaste Mr. Y for whatever reason, guess who's hearing? Guess who's saying, but look at my hypocrite, my mother now coming to the house from church. I hear how she carrying on. My granny, you can believe what I hear my granny saying about Miss, you know, and so on. So when granny now comes to look to correct you, they probably will say, say the correcting sin, you know. So that's why we are on the spot all the time. And what may at times seem to be somebody else's fault, we may very well be responsible for contributing to that situation by not doing enough when we could. I shut up here.
Question? Is there? Identify what you consider to be the two most important social justice issues which you believe the church should be engaged in addressing or tackling, and share your thoughts with the wider group. Identify what you consider to be the two most prominent social justice issues which you believe the church should be engaged in addressing or tackling, and share your thoughts with the wider group. Two most important, prominent social issues. Well, I think that from our discussion, it would seem that family life can be one of those issues that the church should be dealing with in trying to get our children back on board. As a teacher, I know when I was teaching, I have left teaching over 15 years, so nearly 15 years. And in all schools, primary schools that is, there was a school Bible. And children had to know what was in those Bibles. Yeah, as Father Small said, they had the 10 Commandments to learn. And then there were other Bible stories which had their morals and values. Today, I believe the syllabus has changed slightly, but they have no religious moral education where they are taught values. I believe the church has a part to play in promoting good and strong family life. Wholesome families where children are at the center of the matter of concern, and trying to get our young people back in line as they were some years ago. Thank you. I think family life has changed. I think as a boy growing up and today, when we look at families now, we find that families have changed somewhat. And we find that the children are not as, they are very outspoken, yes, but they are not as respectful as the children of yesteryear. And we know that before, anyone could speak to a child and correct that child if it was going wrong. But today, that doesn't seem to be the norm anymore. You are afraid to tell children sometimes what they are doing is wrong and that they should be doing X or Y instead. As you know, it said that it takes a village to raise a child. But that doesn't seem to be accepted anymore. I'm not sure. This one.
All right. All right, good evening. I'm going to share my thoughts on the notion of social justice within our society. I'm more specifically looking at our young people, because we know that this is where many of our problems manifest themselves. And when we listen to the young people, especially as teachers, Sunday school teachers, persons who are working with young people, we hear, well, I have heard a lot of the boys in schools saying that the girls are treated better than they are in school. They feel a sense that they are being marginalized, and the girls are always the ones who are being praised. The girls are the ones who are being given privileges. The girls are the ones who are coddled, and so on and so forth. So then you get situations where boys start to rebel, and they express feelings of anger that they don't have a voice. Persons treat them as if they don't have a voice, that they listen to the girls when they speak, and then when the boys, when they're speaking, they are not given the same courtesy. Sometimes it's like sit down, or if they're expressing feelings, even other students in the class may say to them, but you know, you're a boy, you could really just suck it up. So the boys are feeling as if they're not being given a voice. They're feeling as if the adults, especially teachers, unfortunately, do not give them the same attention, and they start to act up and act out. So for example, a boy may come to the teacher says, okay, nobody is going to the bathroom at this time. The class has just started, this is only 10 minutes into the lesson, nobody is going out. A boy comes and the boy says, I want to go to the bathroom, and he may be told, go and sit down. And then the girl comes and the girl is like, I have to go. Go ahead. And then you hear, but wait, but look, ma'am, you just said nobody could go outside, and look, she gone outside, you see. And then it starts, a whole range of feelings and discussion, and you're trying to talk to them and tell them, but no, she may have an issue, but ma'am, I may have an issue too. So it is how we treat them, especially the boys, and we tend to think that the boys need all of these male role models in order for them to feel, like young men, so that they don't cause issues or get into like violent acts and so on. But I'm telling you that there are young men who also need that female presence, that female role model in their lives. So we have to listen to our young people. We have to listen to our young men who think that they don't have a voice. A lot of them think that they're being unfeared. And then if we listen to some of our men, even more mature men, they too think that they're getting a raw deal in our society. From mothers who are stopping them from seeing their children, from other persons who are unfairing them. So how do we, as a society, respond to the males in particular situations, as opposed to how we respond to the females? So that is something that we need to think about when we're thinking of social justice, in terms of making sure that everybody is heard and nobody is being discriminated against, so you're not showing bias for one gender over another gender, and so on. So we need to address these issues, because when they build up, I am telling you, these young men are exploding. And it's not only this, there are other issues as well, but students will say to me, I would say, but why are you finding me? And they say, man, because you listen. You listen to us. Some teachers they don't want to listen to us. So I see Desmond shaking his head. I I guess he has something to add. But as I said, we need to listen and hear what are some of these thoughts that they're having and see how we can best try to mitigate against some of the issues and the problems that we're seeing being manifested.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Good evening. I support what Kathy said, but there is an emerging social issue in this country that we seem not to be aware of, or we seem not to want to be aware of it. And it is the deterioration in the behavior of young girls in this country. And it becomes a social issue because women by nature are the ones that train up, nurture children. We live in a society, probably throughout even this entire region, where women take the lead in nurturing children. You're finding today that those who will be the future mothers are now the ones that are into a lot of deviant behavior as well. There are occasions when I see more girls involved in fights on the road today than we see boys. If you look at the last set of videos that was posted on social media with fights, wasn't boys, was girls. How do we seek to deal with this? I strongly believe that the church has to look at a total revamp of the Mothers Union and the women's groups within the diocese. Because these must be the groups that from within the church must now seek to attract the younger women that are in the church into these organizations. And from there, these groups must make their way into our schools and into our communities. I can tell you sometimes the challenge of getting into schools is who today are the people that are leading our schools. They're not Anglicans anymore. And that is a stumbling block. But we have to get beyond that and get into the communities. We need to look at how we are going to reshape the Mothers Union. There's the Mothers Union, and we have to ask ourselves, does the Mothers Union in its present form able to cater for the next 25 years to women in this country? What is the long-term plan of the church, of the diocese, for the Mothers Union? When you look at a lot of the churches, the Mothers Unions have not emerged since COVID. Because a lot of the persons involved with the Mothers Union are old persons and they're afraid, and you cannot fight them on that. But we as a church, how do we put together groups that will seek to reach out to the young women? And young women are crying out for help as well. How do we help them? We sometimes turn, a lot of times, we turn a blind eye to the abuse of young girls in this society. It would be interesting to find out how many of our teenagers had babies through that COVID period. Had babies during the COVID period. There were reported cases of male relatives molesting girls during that shutdown period in this country. Who do they reach out to? What they are doing is reaching out in the wrong way. They're finding themselves involved with a lot of shady characters. You have young girls in this country that will drive up and down on minibuses all over this country every single day, and then turn up to schools late. All over. But we as a society, we are one of the most pretensive societies in the world. We pretend it does not happen at certain levels, and it happens at other levels. But if you're on the ground, you understand that it is happening at every level in this society. Look, you will hear about fights at my school. You will hear about fights at my school, but you won't hear about the big breakdown fights that you got at the so-called prestigious schools in this country, because them got people in the media that can shut it down. And this is what we are facing. And we are approaching crisis point with young women in this society. And it's not true. No. We recognize the situation with young men. And let me tell you something. In a lot of cases now, the men is who's shooting the men. But when you go in effect, and a shooting takes place in effect, the gun got in there with the women. Because the search that you do with the man, you're not doing with the woman, particularly if it's a male at the door. And the women, we know for a fact that the women are the ones that are taking the weapons into effects. That's the reality of it. So there's the need to stop turning the blind eye to the real social issues that will affect this country. And all of us, we have to ask ourselves where we will be in the next 15 years. It's so long. Where will we be in the next 15 years? I keep saying to people, you can have all the economic growth in the world, and the society is bad, the economic growth will come to naught. It will come to naught. If you want in this society, shoplifters in this society have been more women than men. Going to Jordan's and them supermarkets and you will see pictures up with women that shoplift throughout this country as a profession. I know women that used to leave Barbados and go to St. Lucia and shoplift. Not that men don't steal too, but I'm saying we have to pay attention to what is happening to the women. The church has to put in place programs. We have to look at the Mothers Union. We have to look at the women's groups. We have to look at forming new groups. We have to look at strengthening and forming alliances with existing groups, the seroptimists. the optimists, all of these non-governmental organizations that are reaching out. Can we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but how do we join with them to help strengthen what they are doing? Because by extension, if we strengthen what they are doing, it puts the whole country in a better position. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have an emerging crisis on our hands, and it is in the name of female. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Curtin.
On Saturday, that was Saturday yesterday, no, Friday. Friday, a teacher came to my house and said, I'm going to tell you who the teacher is, but anyhow, she said, a 5-year-old asked me today, a girl came to me, Miss, and called her name. Could you tell me why girls have to bear little babies? They have, and she described what the male has and what the female has. Why are they different? Why are we different? That we have to bear pain all the time, and the men has no pain. They have no pain. She asked other questions as well, the little child. I said, what did you tell her? She said, darling, I can't answer you. On Monday morning, I will find the answer for you. Here? I wonder if you could answer it, or anyone here could answer it. On the second issue that I will speak on is, and that's important to me, so I can tell the teacher what I should tell that, what she should tell that little child. I have been living where I have been living now 35, 40 years. And I have seen, I live on a long street. And I speak to every child on that street. I can't tell you that I know their names, but I talk to all of them. Some of them hide when they're smoking this, what do you call it now? Yeah, all of those things. And they put it behind them when they see me coming. And one day I said to this child, it was raining, and I said to this young man, may I give you a lift? Should I, come with me because it's raining? And the young man said, he got in with me, the front seat, and said to me, Mrs. Taylor, you are the first person on this street that has ever offered me a seat in their car. And I felt so sad for him, because the man was now about 25, 26. And we have, if we are a part of this community, we have to do it. Every morning, I travel from where I live, go up to Shop Hill, and return at 6:30 in the morning. I meet Cannon on the way sometimes. So we're out very early. And I speak to everybody on that street, two. And when I am driving a different car, they look out for me and they see me. They know me. I don't know any of them, and I don't believe that they know my name. But they feel real good when you talk to them. Sometimes I stop and ask them. I saw a fellow the other day selling cane. that he did not grow, I believe. And I said, I wanted to stop by him, stop. He was selling sugarcane and drinking beer. And I wanted to invite him to church this morning. But the traffic, there was so much traffic that I had to go on because they were tooting. So I think that we have to think of the community, the children, the adults, the old ones, and the young ones, and try to put our Christian living, the practice, into what we say that we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will not keep you again.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to lend my voice to the conversation. And as you were speaking, the thought kept coming to my mind, accentuate the positive. I think most of the time, when we speak of transformation, or we speak of violence, or the need for change, our mind automatically goes to the negative. And although that is good because there are things that are happening, I think sometimes we have to realize, even in the midst of the negative things, there are positive things that we can highlight. I remember years ago, I was at the bus stop, and there were a group of children just liming. Well, one was nicely dressed, so I assume he liked me. We were waiting for the bus. But as I listened to the conversation, I realized this young gentleman, nice haircut, nicely attired, so therefore he's going to function to represent whatever. He was the only person using foul language. And it started to grind my spirit. I said, okay, let me remove myself, calm myself down and think of a way to approach him. So I looked at him again, I looked at the other students that was with him, and I went over and I said, good evening. And I complimented him on his attire and, did a little chit chat with the other. I said, youngster, could I have a word with you? And I called him aside. I said, what is the difference between yourself and the others that you're with? And he looked puzzled. So I said, but look at your dress. They have on home clothes. You are dressed, so clearly you are going out to represent a group. I said, so what are you doing? He identified the group. I said to him, do you think your behavior right now positively addresses or represents that group that you're going to perform? And said no. I said, there are other persons who are passing the street and they're assessing the situation. You have to remember, yes, they're not all because we're not saints, but when you are out, you have to remember who you are and who you are representing. I said, I want you to consider it, think about it, and remember when you're going out, yes, you're representing yourself, but there are other organizations. And I said all this to say that we have myriads of young people and organizations that are doing positive things in this country, but we highlight the negative. And even when we know that there are young people in our community who are doing positive things, we still do not take the opportunity to encourage, to compliment, to see how we can build out upon, they have a good idea, but it might need fleshing out. Could we partner as a church, as a social organization, to partner with them and see how we can take it to another level? Because in our thinking, most of our age groups, we would have grown up in a certain class of society that had particular values, norms, and so on. Those things young people are not identifying with. So we have to sometimes take a step back, see the things that they are interested in, how we can come and complement them, how we can, through building relationship, then start to inculcate some of the other norms that we know that are going to create that foundation that is going to take them to another level. So that we're embracing, complementing, but still working along with them, rather than coming and saying to them, this is the way you should do it. I think that approach, yes, we have other approaches, but that approach can also lend itself. And then my final point is the dynamics of social media is changing so rapidly, and the constant assault that even when you are thinking you have assessed the situation, you've come up with a game plan, by the time you've executed it, the situation has galloped so far. So yes, we know that we want to do things, but it's a constant transformation, reinventing, reapproach, thinking. So it's not a one-stop that's going to fix all, but we have to be able to capture those ones we can, and if in the 10 I can capture 2, commit the others to God. Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to question 3.
Based on the last speaker. Thank you. In today's gospel, Jesus reinforced to his disciples and to Martha and Mary that we have to work while it is day, because night comes when you cannot see to work. You might work, but you know what you're doing because you can't see. And I think that what you've shared, ma'am, and what was shared before that is leading us in the journey of what we need to attempt to do. And we have to, you will not be successful at every turn, but it is better that we try, because sometimes you don't get the response right away, but down the road, someone will come back and say, you remember when, and you don't even recall, but the fact that you gave the gentleman a lift in your car, see how that seared in his mind. You're the first person that has ever allowed me or invited me to get into their car for a lift. These are the kind of things that a lot of our young people are seeing and measuring and making decisions with and so on. And sometimes in your best interests, you know. And the fact that you're a Christian means a lot, because they expect perfection from us. And sometimes we have to rethink again. And this happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I'd been doing some wonderful things, I thought, to help a youngster. And then he misbehaved on my premises at my residence. And I had to speak to him about it. And rather than acknowledge, he has not yet, well, yeah, you're right, I was wrong to do so and so. So when he walked away, he said, and one of his Christians, that's what Christians do, trick you. You know. I wouldn't tell you what came into my head. It only came into my head. But I was angry because, you know, it's like you've done everything. And now at this point, you're still wrong. And I think that's where my sermon comes in. You got to lean on God in those times.
Following on from the conversation, what I gather, and which is important, is how do we communicate? In other words, how do you begin a conversation that would take that person from where he is to where you want them or where you are? And a good example is how Jesus approached situation. Take, for example, the woman at the well. You observe what happened? He chose to go by the well where he was certain that people would come and observe what was happening. And he initiated the conversation by asking one question or saying something. And there was a response. And once that conversation begins, you have to listen and speak when it is necessary. And there must be a catching phrase or sentence that will draw out from the person what you want to hear, where they are, and then you can share what you have or what they ought to be. So it's a matter of being able to communicate, to read the mind, to anticipate the next question and response. And take that person from being raucous to seeing the gentle side of how he can approach things. I remember, and I have this experience, I have many experiences, but this was one where I went to school for the purpose of picking up my grandson. And while I was standing outside the gate waiting, the bell rang and the children came out. And there were these upper form, he had on long pants and shirt, which means that he was upper form. When a group of girls and boys, and when they came out, this particular boy sort of undressed himself. By that I mean he pulled out his
Shirt.
His right shirt, and begin now he's on the street. But there, he also began to use language. He didn't know who I was. I was dressed as a civilian. And I do that deliberately. And I listened to the conversation and saw what happened. Then I gently went over and spoke with him. And he began to communicate. Then we reached a point where he saw where I was coming from, what I was saying, but then he went into the other mode of using the language he would normally use on the street. But I was trying to move him from that point to the other side. And I'm sure because he is reaching a stage where he is going to go out into the world, that is maybe a job or something like that. But the way how he was carrying himself was not going to do him any good. So we have to be able to communicate, and you have to use your observation first and foremost. You have to listen, and then you have to wait for the moment where you introduce yourself. By either making a statement, oh, you look very beautiful there this evening. That's one way. There's a response, and as soon as the response, you move to the next. And in that exercise, you must establish or build a sense of friendship. You can trust me, or you listen to me as I listen to you. And from there, initially maybe hostile, but once you have brought the person to a level that you know is fairly comfortable, you can then, it may take a little while, it may take longer, or it may take the moment when you say, well, I will see you or I will meet you again on this matter. And you can reach persons in that way. And I think that we, the members of the church, must be able to communicate with people. That is, to initiate your conversation and lead them to Christ. That's the way you want them to. They may say, well, they begin to be arguing some, but you have to know how to deal with that situation. But communication is very important. How you do it and the techniques you use is important. Person to person. And the good thing is that you don't normally speak to persons generally in groups or public. Like, for example, this morning in the gospel, Martha spoke to Mary privately. One-to-one, privately. And it was effective. So it can be effective as you speak. Observe, and you observe, as you will, how the children are behaving, and look for the leader of the group. Because generally the leader, and you have to know how to get to that leader. When you have gotten that leader, you can change the rest. So, Father, I think that we have, as the church, as clergy, we have to teach ourselves, we have to teach our congregation how to reach other people. All right?
Yeah.
Made a statement that indeed the conversation is a very interesting one, but ADSIL is in support of establishing mentorship programs to help some of our young people. He further adds, we need to engage and get them to listen. Most of them will talk to you privately once you make them feel comfortable and you're not here to judge them. We also must offer alternatives for some of the decisions they may make out of frustration. And Rose adds, I remember I used to go to the workshops with the different schools to get the students' opinion. We need to bring those back. So those are some of the online comments.
Question 3. From the general discussion within the group, and having chosen one or two local issues which deserve an advocacy, join a smaller group with 3 others and take 10 to 15 minutes. Craft a response that can be offered either at the local church, deanery level, the mission on justice, advocacy, and social responsibility, and then share your group's suggestion with everyone present. This seems to be a follow-up to what we are doing. This activity can be facilitated either online or in person. And the responses developed must be inclusive, concise, and targeted. You can do number 4 and then come back to that one. Yeah. What organizations could your local church or deanery or the CJASR work with to take the situations, to tackle the situations you have identified? 5. How is the 4th month reflected in our diocese map? How can you within your parish or deanery participate to ensure that their missional objective is fulfilled? What organizations can your local church work with to take the situations you have identified?
I think that all of the organizations within the church must be involved in this. And one organization we need not overlook is that of health, right? Because there are a number of issues, health issues affecting our young people. And we sort of overlook that. So we need really and truly to involve our health ministries in this particular task. So I support the fact that we need to have all of the organizations on board, and especially the Health Guild, which is often overlooked in these matters. Right. Or forgotten.
We also talked about women's organizations, forgetting the men's organizations in our church as well. I think the men's fellowship also has a role to play in these issues as well. That answers question 4. Question 5, what is the fourth month reflected? What is the fourth month reflected in our diocese map? And how can you within your parish, deanery, participate to ensure this missional objective is achieved, is fulfilled? Fourth month we look at today. Transformation, which ties in with the map, social justice in our society. The question is asked, how can you within your parish or deanery participate to ensure the missional objective is fulfilled?
Question 3, if you looked at that again, seems to set up for us to have a discussion on how we would go about prioritizing what is worded. I don't know that we can, I'm just suggesting that maybe we can organize it in such a way that we can, through the online, respond to it, and maybe our next session, if we can respond to what the results were, how do you want to do that? Look at that question, it is a great question.
Question 3 once more. Question 3. From the general discussion within the group, and having chosen one or two local issues which deserves an advocacy response, join a smaller group with 3 others and take 10 to 15 minutes to craft a response that can be offered either at the local church, deanery level, or the Commission on Justice, Advocacy, and Social Responsibility, and then share your group's suggestion with everyone present. This activity can be facilitated either online or in person, and the responses developed must be inclusive, concise, and targeted.
Is that a homework challenge? Yeah, is it possible that we can do that tonight? Discuss the three areas? And we can deal with that first thing. What are the three areas that we have in mind? Could we kindly ask that question 3 be put up on the screen again so we can go through it slowly? We talk about family, youth, girls, challenges of, well, it's not just challenges of girls, so youth, family. Chosen the issues.
That bothered me. And I was saying that in everything that we do, I was saying that we're thinking, hey, as in bigger children. But I think that the most things that we want and should do is to start in the primary school. The primary school need to get people to start them on the road so that when they get to the secondary schools, at least we will have them having a kind of, yes. Because what I'm seeing now is the primary school children, they're just as, I wouldn't say bad, but they're just as, yes. And I think that we're leaving out the primary school children and going up there. We need to start at the primary level. Get some programs into the primary school, if they would allow us to. Because you still got to look at the point where, if they would allow you to. But I think the primary school children need to be pointed in a direction where they would not deviate from it when they get to the 11 plus, where they're going into secondary school. Because I think that that's what we are missing, that primary level, to start it there. Yes, yes. Because, I mean, if you start from down there to do what you have to do, when the child get, all are not going to get to the point where that they're going to be deviant. Some are going to teach the others, and you will have, to me, a better society.
It could mean that we will lose a generation.
But it's somehow bugging me that the primary school level is where all of what we want to do should start.
I couldn't agree with our sister more, because I saw and I knew and I made sure that the primary school, or the school within my my parish, that I went there every week as God allowed me to. And those children, they listened, and they remembered much of what they were taught. And the teachers and the principal were very cooperative, and they wanted to see the priests in the school. That was the foundation of this nation. But we allowed, or because church and state were separated, but it did not and still does not prevent the priests from taking a very vital role in the education of these children. And my going to the school and sharing the service in whatever reform made a great impression, so much so that the head teachers always look forward to when I was coming. And I was heartened a few months ago, I think last year, the new year, when I went back to a certain school. I was passing, I had gone to somewhere, but I determined before I go, come back home, I'm going to stop by the school. And surprisingly, should I say, but the head teacher was glad to see me. And he put me in his office to sit down. And he was very concerned that his school is not getting the kind of support from the church as it should. So, yes, we have teachers in school who are Anglicans, non-Anglicans, all kinds of things. But I believe the minister, the parish priest, has a vital role to play still in this nation, particularly at this time. So I would want to encourage my brothers and sisters to let it be on their heart to have those schools under their wings. But I would also want to encourage us Anglicans in whatever sphere of operation we find ourselves, that we exercise a measure of influence, not forcing on anybody, but from your approach and communication, you can win others over. And what it means is that, first and foremost, we have to look at ourselves. Who are we? How are we behaving in relation to the others? Vital. Because, as I think my brother said earlier, people are watching us, are watching Christians, and they watch and they wait. When I want to communicate with them, they said, well, if you are a Christian and that is how you're behaving, do you want me? So you're determining that we are going to love, to share, to communicate with others will determine your future and how they behave. Because I can personally testify that many of those children who attended school throughout my ministry, again and again, from time to time, I run into them, or they run into me, or one way or other, and invariably they communicate. And they call me by name, and I don't know them. But they said, well, where did you, and I tried to see where they possibly could have met me. But they said, okay, you used to come to the school and we listen, and I listen, and they are positions that they can do that. So, yes, Anglicans have a responsibility to share their influence in places where they work, where they move, and have whatever the situation, wherever you are, you should be able to let the goodness of God in you reach others. Yes, school very important. That foundation. One time, of course, the home schools had that influence, but the onus now is on the primary school. And if you can begin to change those, touch those young minds, we can win back this society.
Thank you. We've got some other online comments. The video is ready, so I would merely suggest that we now point to the video and then get ready to have our...
I'm Father Marcus Lashley, and I have the honor and privilege to chair the Diocesan Commission on Justice, Advocacy and Social Responsibility. During the course of Lent 2023, the Commission will guide you a little bit on the fourth mark of mission, transformation. We've therefore put together some guidelines for you, and they are literally that, just guidelines. Each parish or deanery will design whatever you want to craft to make this a reality. There are many unjust structures in our society, and you know what they are. You are right there in the community. You know the problems within our society. And so, as we seek to make a change, a transformation, as we respond during this Lent in very practical ways based on our 5 marks of mission, I want to just share 2 aspects that are important as we engage this exercise. The first is that whenever the Church encounters unjust structures and systems, we first look and listen. We look in a way that reflects the eyes of Jesus. How did Jesus see the rich young man who came to him, who wanted to become part of the kingdom? How did Jesus listen to the woman at the well? She had a very unique story to tell, but an important story to tell. It was one that was rooted in both culture and her personal experience. When you come to look at the guidelines which we have shared with you, I want to begin the process by stepping back and looking at your community, at the systems that need to be changed. I want to listen to the people who are impacted by them, especially people within your own community and within the community of the Church. Secondly, we not only look and listen differently, we also respond or act differently. While many other organizations and organisms within the community act and respond out of their interest, we respond and act based on kingdom values, the values that we bear, not our interests. So as you engage this exercise of designing your interventions, your responses, please be guided by values, our kingdom values. Ultimately, the intention is that our response, our intervention, must cause a transformation, that is to say, a change at 2 levels. A change of heart and of thinking from within, whether as an individual or as a community. And secondly, there must be a transformation from not just heart, but also from our hand, our action. Our actions must transform the lives of the people that we will touch. And at the heart of all of this, let us not forget that we are responding first and foremost to people, the people that God loved enough that he died for them. And let that be your focus. Not just on the thing you're doing, the exercise, the intervention, but on the people, the lives that you will transform and change. The Commission and I are really excited to see what you will produce, and be assured of the support and guidance of the Office of the County Commissioner and of our County Commissioner himself, Reverend Canon Dr. Vaughan Watson. Know of our prayers and our support for you, and we really want to see some exciting acts of change and of transformation in our community and in our nation. God bless you all. I'm Father Marcus Lashley, and I have the honor and privilege to
Father Roosevelt, just to draw to your attention that we do have some further responses. And from these responses, in garner that persons are very interested in the family and in youth. We've got 2 ideas, and in the interest of time, I would suggest that we need not worry about the third at this time, but right after Easter, the St. Peter Deanery can gather on Zoom, and we can start looking at some of these suggestions and probably come up with some others for consideration. And then we can do the work from there, breaking into groups, finding facilitators, and working either face-to-face or on Zoom or both in order to get this done and then submitted to Father Marcus and Dr. Marcus and his commission. So this will give us some time to really think about the exercise we've been through this evening, and I would invite you to put your thoughts down on paper or record them so you don't forget, so that when we meet after Easter, and this will be a good way of keeping the St. Peter Deanery together, right, we meet after Easter, we could formulate our plans then and be able to make a contribution so that we do our due diligence and we are responsible in our commitment. So we're very passionate about what we've discussed this evening. It means then that we need to get the work done. We've been challenged with that, and we've been given some guidelines in terms of how we can accomplish it, what we want us to consider as we pull everything together. So those of you who are here this evening, please remember that we'll be expecting you to be a big part of the plans going forward. We want to have your input and to be able to make this a full deanery event. And of course, your incumbents, your rectors will be in close contact with you in terms of pressing forward on this matter. That's my suggestion for the evening. Part 5. What is part 5? Mark. We can, right, we would add that, I think we can add that to, yeah, I think we can probably, unless somebody has any thoughts, any suggestions on that right now, I believe that, yes, yes.
I just want to be clear so that everybody knows.
Okay.
So if you could do that, please.
All right. The next.
Sorry? There's minutes.
What?
When you say next Sunday, what do you mean?
On Sunday.
Okay. So I'm on next.
You're on next, yes.
I'm on Sunday.
Yes.
Right. So you want to finish this?
No, it would only be a synopsis. So,
Oh, okay.
Right.
All right. Well, somebody will. Yeah.
So just that you have clarity, that's why I asked. Because some people think it's Palm Sunday.
So we're not doing or whatever.
No, we are gathering next Sunday evening for our 5th mark of mission. But for this particular exercise, which certainly cannot be done at this time, and for me, I think it's important that we don't abandon it because we are going to finish with this Lenten exercise. What this does is give us the opportunity to come back after and to work on this particular mark of mission and the activity as identified in point 3. Right, we want to be able to complete that as being responsible citizens of the St. Peter Deanery. Right. So we're only deferring part 3 to a later date, which will occur after Easter. But we gather back here next Sunday evening to complete now the 5th mark of mission, which is treasure. And Father Desmond will be leading us in that one.
I saw persons writing down this Bible passages which you can read for yourself during the week. There are about 6 to 7 of them. You can focus on transformation. I want to thank you for your participation in this evening's discussion, and we hope that all of you will get home safely until we meet again on Palm Sunday here at 5 o'clock next Sunday. Yes. It's a closing prayer, can we? May I ask Father Small would like to lead us in a closing prayer? Yes.
Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you for this opportunity to meet and share. Pray that what we have heard, what we have said this evening will be distilled and our understanding deepened. We ask your help that we be able to share and execute our plan, that many may return from the way of violence and injustice, the way of love, peace, and joy, which is found only in you. Grant to us this night your eternal presence, that we may dwell in peace and safety, and that those who would do evil may return to you and be changed and transformed into your likeness. We ask you to continue to shed your blessing upon our clergy, especially our bishop, and those committed to his charge. Bless your people, and may they take counsel for the good affairs of our diocese and our land. And now, O Father, as we have come to the end of this session, we ask you to take us home in peace and safety. Visit our homes and drive far from them the snares of the enemy. Let your holy angels dwell there to preserve your servants in peace. And the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, rest and abide with you this night and always.
Amen. Our closing hymn, God of freedom, God of justice, 220 CPWI. during the same singing of the same hymn, collect shall be taken.